Hey lads, I got quite a few questions asking about stats priority for Restoration Shamans, so I decided to record a video and give you my take on how things look like. Keep in mind that first, my stats are not perfect simply because I was gearing for enhancement at the beginning of the expansion, and second, don't take anything I say for granted, because I'm obviously not the best shaman in the world, and something else might work better for you than for me. So let's start with M+. The most important stat there, probably for you, is going to be Critical Strike. If you're running the Resurgence talents, you'll be getting a lot of mana back just because of your Critical Strikes. And if you're running the Ancestral Awakening talent, your Healing Surge and Riptide crit strikes will also grant you extra healing because of this talent. Keep in mind that we have another synergist with Tidal Waves, which increases the Healing Surge critical strike chance by 30%, and if you're on HS Fury, you get 4% more critical strike just like that. It's also important to mention that this tier we have a set bonus, which actually is connected to our critical strike. If you have Cloudburst or Healing Stream rolling, you get 10% more critical strike chance, and if you have 4-piece set, you are getting 215% effectiveness of your critical strike than the regular 200. The other stat that's actually going to be very good for you in M+ content is going to be Versatility. It grants you both increased healing and damage, and it also reduces the damage you take, which becomes more and more important the higher keys you run. The last stat that I'm going to mention for M+ is Haste. Now, Haste is a little bit two-edged, because if you have too much Haste, you run out of mana very quickly, and if you have too little Haste, the game will feel very slow, and your cast will take more time than usual. However, it's worth mentioning that if you're interested into doing damage as a Restoration Shaman, the more haste you have, the more damage you're going to do. So my general advice is stack as much haste as you feel comfortable with. It's anything between 15 and 20% is probably going to be fine. And then split the rest between crit and verse. The higher the key, the more verse you actually want to have with priority over crit, but if you're running lower keys, probably crit is going to give you more value. If you have any sockets with gems, the one that I recommend is the Radiant Alexstrasite, which gives you a lot of crit and a little bit of verse. To put everything into perspective, you can see the values of the diminishing returns of every stat on your screen right now. If you reach those values, you're at 30% of that stat, and everything that you get above that is going to give you less value than the regular points below that threshold. So around 2500 haste is going to get you to about 15% of haste, and then with the rest of your stats you can try to hit either the crit or the versatility diminishing returns point, either at 5400 or 6100 respectively. Again, based on the level of the content that you're doing. On some higher keys you just need more versatility to survive, but if you're doing lower keys you can invest more into crit. And lastly, let's mention the Master, which is the fourth stat that I didn't talk about so far. It increases the healing that you're doing based on the missing amount of health to your target. In other words, the less health a target has, the more healing you're going to do to them. However, in M+, we're trying to keep everybody topped up, so they should rarely be at low health, so you can actually get value out of your mastery. Now, don't get me wrong, there are specific fights which will inevitably drop you down to low health percentages. However, those are private cases, and in those scenarios you can count on your other stats to get you out of trouble instead of the master, which is going to give you no value when everybody is at high health. So when it comes down to running M+ content, I basically avoid mastery as much as I can, and I try to focus more on the other stats. Now that goes against what I said so far, because you can see that my mastery is relatively high here, but that's because I was gearing for an enhancement, and mastery is pretty good for enhancement, not so much for Resto Shaman in M+. That being said though, mastery could be pretty good if you're doing some hard content where people are basically guaranteed to drop low, like PvP or high-end raiding. So for raid, I would recommend still try to get all the benefits that we get from the crit strike, but then the harder the content it is, the more mastery you want to stack over verse, as you're going to get a lot of benefits from it, and if it's easier content, you can actually stack verse over mastery. In the raid scenario, I would say that haste is the least valuable stat from all of them. So that's my take on the Restoration Shaman stat priority. Let me know if you agree or you don't, and of course, as I said, don't take my words for granted. This is what works for me, but you might find a formula that actually works better for you. Experimenting always helps, so I would like to hear your opinions and your results from the experiments in the comments below. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video, and happy healing!